Um, Good afternoon. Thanks for listening to me. I'm an economist, and economists have very boring dreams. So I want to confess that up first, so that you won't get disappointed. But I'd like to share with you mine, boring as it is, and at least you'll know the kind of dreams that economists dream. Now, John Maynard Keynes, my favorite economist of all time, arguably the greatest economist that's lived, said, the political problem of mankind is to combine three things: economic efficiency, social justice, and individual liberty. Now, Singapore's already achieved a very high level of economic efficiency, and my dream as an economist, modest as it, boring as it is that in the next 50 years, perhaps well before, we will also achieve an equivalent level of social justice and individual liberty. And this is my dream. The last 50 years of nation building has firmly established Singapore as a global, competitive, highly successful economy/city-state with strong fundamental foundations, prosperity, potential, undreamt of by its frugal and visionary founders. With one of the highest per capita incomes, in fact, probably the highest per capita income in the world, excluding the oil states. The next 50 years will determine how much of this hard-earned, miraculous potential is actually realized for her people, and whether this shining city-state she now is can also become a nation-state, a true home, where all citizens can live securely, free from want, with a well-being sense of community, participation, opportunity that make them proud to be Singaporeans and happy that their children remain so. As a pragmatic economic and social analyst schooled in studying long-term global trends, I'm optimistic that we can get there. But a happy ending to this second half of nation building is by no means certain. Globalization and technological innovation have generated a distressing extreme income and wealth inequality in the developed world economy of which we are an inextricable part. An inequality also marked by stagnation or economic erosion for the majority. And this makes this new globalized inequality both a political as well as an economic problem. It's a crisis of the social compact, not just socioeconomic policy. In Singapore, these distressing trends have been exacerbated by a misguided labor-intensive growth model of the last 2 decades, which has raised the population from 3 to 5.5 million in 20 years, depressed wages and productivity, and led to a potentially acute overcrowding problem that is already very damaging to citizen well-being and the social fabric. Key social services like public housing, healthcare, transportation, education, social security have also lagged behind the social dislocation caused by globalization, poor policy, and demographic aging. And this has markedly strained our social compact and our trust in public policy. Now, without a healthy and stable social compact, the social cohesion needed for national identity and belonging is precarious. Political legitimacy and its vital twin, trust in governance, institutions, and policy, likewise becomes weak and dysfunctional. A healthy social compact is therefore fundamentally necessary if we are to make a successful transition from being merely a successful city-state to a viable, resilient, and cohesive nation. In the long term, there are 3 key requirements for stable and successful social compact. First, market competitiveness. Second, adequate social protection. And third, sufficient democratic development. A study of long-term trends suggests that these are 3 unavoidable, irresistible social demands for both political legitimacy and stable governance. They constitute an essential foundational trinity for healthy economy, polity, and society. Governments that can provide these 3 requirements in balance will tend to have relatively healthy social compact, and those who fall short will have their social compacts undermined by the very area they fail to develop. Singapore's essential social compact trilemma, and I call it a trilemma, is a highly developed economic competitiveness, but an underdeveloped social protection and a relatively undeveloped democratic development. Our polity therefore tends towards social compact crisis centered around social protection and democratic development issues. The most likely political expression of this is a gradual loss of political legitimacy and credibility, policy credibility, a cumulative loss of social cohesion and social capital, as well as a creeping policy paralysis, populism, and a politics of petty recrimination rather than constructive debate. The only stable, positive, long-term solution to breaking out of this vicious circle is to broaden governance priorities to seriously develop both adequate social protection and working democratic institutions. Adequate social protection in Singapore's context needs major social policy reform in 6 key areas: social security, healthcare, public housing, education, public transport, and population and immigration policy. Now, to be fair, the government has woken up to the importance of social protection in inclusive growth. There have been major recent reforms, including moving towards universal healthcare in hospitalization. The price of new public housing has been delinked from the market-determined resale prices, and a serious effort has been made to make first-time flats more affordable. A pioneer generation package has been introduced to reduce medical expenses of the elderly, and major reforms in non-graduate education and training are planned. This is commendable and is moving social protection policy significantly in the right direction. However, legitimate concerns remain that such efforts are piecemeal and insufficiently bold or transformative. Public rental housing is still not sufficiently available as an option to meet low-income housing needs. Long-term primary care and long-term care are still inadequate for middle and low-income citizens, painfully so. Both the working poor, the unemployed poor, and the elderly poor are not getting the full state help they can or need to get from the government, and which the government can well afford to give. Retirement adequacy for the poor is still badly inadequate, witness the CPF imbroglio. The education system remains far too reliant on unnecessary streaming and mass testing, hampering social mobility, owing to the better access of the rich to the massive shadow education system of public tuition. Public transport in a country where few can afford cars still markedly lags public transport systems in Hong Kong or Taipei. While immigration has been lessened, see the news recently, we are still on a trajectory for a terminal population much above, not significantly below 6.9 million by 2065, 50 years' time. All this represents outstanding, unreformed social protection policy that is still undermining vital policy credibility and ultimately political legitimacy. Democratic reforms in Singapore will be even more difficult, requiring the development of a whole wide range of new democratic institutions and practices, starting from an even lower base. This requires major political reform in 6 key areas: free media and speech, guaranteed access to public information, stronger rights of association and organization in civic society, an independent judiciary, an independent civil service, and stronger and more supportive government-civic society links. In my view, and I've, had some experience in having a long view, in my view, over the next 2 decades, the good news for Singapore is that we could well look back on an unprecedented period of reform in these 2 major, currently underdeveloped and undeveloped areas: social protection and democratic development. And well before 2065, it is quite likely we will have much fuller range of both social policy and political reform driven by the irresistible demands for social protection and democratic development demanded by an increasingly informed and organized electorate. Lest this seems implausible to all of us sitting here, keep in mind that all this means is that we would be merely converging towards developed country political and social policy norms from a highly exceptional and probably unsustainable current position. However, this could also happily result, as it did following the political liberalizations in Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, in a much more mature and vibrant society, as well as a level of social and cultural well-being and richness well beyond current norms or imagination. The critical uncertainty is how smooth and successful, or how fractious, disruptive, and contentious this journey will be, for this journey will get to its destination. The more the ruling party leads genuine, radical, and transformative reforms in both these areas, the smoother and more successful this process will be. The more the ruling party resists, only carries out only merely piecemeal reforms, the more potentially disruptive the process, greater public loss of confidence, less social capital, greater policy paralysis, more suboptimal populist policy outcomes that could be difficult to reverse. Our national identity itself may be the ultimate casualty. Government in Singapore is strong institutionally because of the civil service's excellent policy formulation and execution capability, but this is not enough. While it needs to be responsive to elected political direction, the civil service also needs to be above and independent of partisan politics for the long-term public good. Key areas of social policy like healthcare, education, immigration policy, for example, need to be planned and executed over a decade or even longer. Political parties have shorter-term, sometimes populist horizons that may or may not coincide with the long-term public good. This means that top civil service appointments need to be independent of partisan political influence. Government also needs to go beyond its traditional role as director, producer, regulator, and move towards roles such as facilitator, coordinator, co-creator. To do this effectively, it needs open and supportive partnerships with strong, well-researched and resourced and responsible civic society groups, which can share and help anchor and guide its long-term social vision for the common good, insulating long-term policy from the finicky ebb and often unsound flow of populist political dynamics. This current government and ruling party has seen the need to strengthen safety nets and social protection and are moving in the right direction, albeit into piecemeal fashion. Can they continue to do so transformatively, coherently, and boldly enough? As importantly, does the elite governance philosophy of the ruling party prevent it from adequately leading political reform and the development of democratic institutions? If so, this could pose difficult time for Singapore's successful future development from city-state to nation, as Singapore's key social compact trilemma remains painfully unresolved. Thank you.